Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duckbricks. I'm Chris, and welcome to the very first episode of LEGO 2022 Awards, the show where I count down a top 10 list of the best that LEGO had to offer this year. Be it minifigs or sets, there is so much to cover, and for this first episode, we will be taking a look at the top 10 best LEGO minifigures that came in standard retail sets. What I mean by this is that specifically these are the non-collectible minifigure series figures, and that because collectible minifigures are kind of their own breed and act as their own type of thing, I figured it made sense to actually split these videos into two, have a top 10 list for non-CMFs, and then later on in about a week have a top 10 list for the collectible minifigures, specifically the minifigures that appear in the $5 blind bags. But of course there is so much to get into here because LEGO released a ton of fantastic minifigures this year alone, and so without further ado, let's kick things off with number 10. Alright, so starting off with number 10, we have the Buzz Lightyear minifigure from the Lightyear movie sets, which came out around April of this year, specifically in his Star Command suit. Regardless of what you think of the quality of the movie, you have to admit that this is a quality LEGO figure. It's pretty rare to see a brand new set of armor molds, wing molds, and arm printing on what's pretty much just a standard set retail figure, but they really went above and beyond when designing this figure, especially when compared to previous versions of the Buzz Lightyear figure, which are not the ones included in the collectible minifig series. Now this figure is really fantastic because, as you can see, he does feature arm printing on both of his arms, which really just adds an extra layer of detail. It's something that kind of feels required for a Buzz Lightyear figure, so I guess it makes total sense why he actually had that printing here. And I especially like the addition of the Star Command logo here, which you can see right on the side, which kind of points to the logo being used in the movie itself. Now, my favorite thing about this figure is that it actually appeared in a smaller set. Set number 76831 Zerg Battle retailed for $35 US, which is relatively inexpensive compared to many of the other figures that appear in larger sets on this list, and it's really nice to get such a detailed minifigure in a relatively smaller set. Taking apart the minifigure itself, you can see that the printing on the face is actually quite good. Typically, LEGO is pretty hit or miss when printing skin tones on a piece that isn't necessarily a skin tone piece color, but it really did turn out quite well for the lavender printing there. And what's really cool is that this is actually a brand new set of molds. Instead of just reusing the Toy Story molds, which they totally could have, they actually made a brand new set for the wings here. This is something that can be detached. Here's what it looks like on the other side, and it has just a phenomenal amount of detail on it, from the stripes on the wings to the lights on the sides and some of the detail printed on the back. It is just so cool to actually get this much printing on the back of the figure itself. Removing the armor piece itself, you can see that the torso is subsequently quite detailed as well, and you could really easily use this just for your own figures if you wanted to, where let's just remove his accessories here of his blaster and the laser. And this is just a really good astronaut outfit in general, where you can see rotating it around the back. Despite the back being primarily covered up by armor, you can just see there is a massive amount of detail being incorporated here, complete with the Star Command logo on the very front right there, which is especially good because, again, it's pretty much just covered up by the armor piece. Now, if I had one complaint about this particular figure, that would probably be that he does not include the hemisphere kind of spaceman mask that he usually has around most of the other Buzz Lightyear figures. I'm not really sure why they didn't include it. If I think back to the movie, I'm pretty sure they did have them, so I don't know why the sets do not have them. They actually put in holes for this armor piece to accommodate that older half-hemisphere windscreen, so if you owned any of the older LEGO Buzz Lightyear Toy Story figures, you could very easily just put it on this one, but it definitely feels like a very strange omission for literally none of the Buzz Lightyear sets from the Lightyear movie to actually feature that particular piece. Maybe in concept art at one point in the movie they were not going to be using them, so LEGO decided not to include them. That's my only guess as to why they don't have them, but honestly, I just really don't know why they wouldn't be included. Feels like a strange thing to not include for these figures, and that's why it is at number 10, because it does feel like a core piece of this figure is missing. But with that, we can probably now move on to our next pick at number 9. At number 9, we have a minifigure from the LEGO Monkey Kid series. This is Monkey Kid in his battle armor. So this only appeared in one set number 80034 Nezza's Fire Ring, which retails now for around $100. It did not previously retail for that before the price increases, but nowadays if you want to get it, he is exclusive to a $100 set. That being said though, this is probably my favorite variant of Monkey Kid that we have gotten so far. Over the past few years that LEGO Monkey Kid has been releasing, we have gotten a slew of fantastic characters and minifigures, but the Monkey Kid character himself was typically one that stayed mostly the same. Wearing some form of a jacket or hoodie, he did have some dual molded legs and arm printing, but those didn't really kind of stand out from variant to variant until they made this particular figure, which depicts him wearing a full-on battle armor suit, which strangely enough, I may have missed it, but after watching season 3 of the TV show, I don't even think this actually appeared. Maybe it could have been in some shots where he was piloting his mech, but for the most part, this does kind of just seem like a sets thing, and please do correct me if I'm wrong. It's a little bit harder to see specific outfits in that show, particularly because of the art style. It isn't a direct translation to minifig form, but overall, I am very, very happy with the overall look and feel of the figure itself. Obviously, the arm printing is fantastic. I always love it when LEGO does include arm printing and stuff like that in especially their own original themes. That's very rare because you will maybe see it sometimes for licensed sets like the Buzz Lightyear ones, but for original characters from original LEGO stories and themes to have arm printing is just something really special and lends itself to a greater level of detail. I also really love the head print where you can see he actually does have a visor, kind of looking in his battle ready expression, and then just a very, very angry expression on the other side, which sure, it's a little bit similar to stuff we've gotten before. I definitely prefer the visor being the front facing mode for this figure. And while it is just another MK figure, of which we've gotten a lot, this one at least absolutely sets himself apart by being completely unique compared to the others, even featuring the specialized gold armor piece, which, when removed, you can see just some more of the printing on the back with some really nice metallic coloration as well. The only reason why this is so far down the list is that honestly, the Monkey Kid figures themselves are not the most interesting figures to come out of the Monkey Kid lineup. Being the main hero, he's fairly ubiquitous and generic, and there are a lot more interesting figures that came out of the line just this year that are definitely appearing later on down this list, but I definitely wanted to kind of give a shout out to this particular version of the character just because of the insane level of detail they managed to include for what is essentially just the generic protagonist figure of the theme. But with that, let's now move on to number 8. Moving on to number 8, we have the Vincent Van Gogh, or Vincent Van Gogh depending on what region you're in, minifigure from the LEGO Ideas The Starry Night set number 21333. Retailing for $170, the set he came in was absolutely one of the larger and more substantial sets of the Ideas line this year, but the minifigure included is one of the best direct translations of a real person to actual minifigure form that I have ever seen. Now, you may be noticing a trend with these figures that you can see he does have arm printing, but honestly, the arm printing, unlike some of the other figures, is not the reason why he's on this list, although it definitely does help. In fact, the reason is just because this absolutely captures the likeness of the actual real-world artist to a pretty much perfect degree. Essentially, they created a ton of brand new prints for this particular character, from changing around the colors on the easel piece to actually reflect the Starry Night colors, so that is a great touch, to actually recoloring the paintbrush for the blue here, and finally having his jacket kind of be in the style of some of his paintings. You can really see each of the individual white lines going down the jacket and the pants, but especially if you look at that facial expression, he just has the one face on the front, but this is just so perfect for the artist himself. I think this is probably one of the best depictions of a real-life person in LEGO minifig form, and when they first announced that they were going to be doing a minifigure for the set, to be honest, I was a little skeptical because LEGO has been kind of hit or miss in terms of capturing either actor or real-world person likenesses before. A lot of times in stuff like Marvel or stuff like that, they just kind of tend to use generic pieces to represent specific actors' facial features. And it's really cool that for Vincent Van Gogh, they actually went the extra measure to really just create a brand new component for his head to make him just feel that much more special in terms of being a standout character. Overall, this is one of the best minifigures that we've ever gotten from the LEGO Ideas line, and he is down on the list because I just think there are frankly more interesting characters that we'll see later on this list. A little bit more interesting than him because he's just kind of a standard figure with just a torso and legs and whatnot, but the detail on that torso, the legs, and especially the head is stunning, and I think it's just fantastic to see such a good representation of a real-world person, especially when you go off of his actual self-portraits and the paintings of himself. This just captures the likeness perfectly. And with that, we can now move on to the next point. Next up here at number 7, we have the Lady of the Brave Lion Knights. She was exclusive to set number 10305, Lion Knights Castle, which retailed for $400 to celebrate the 90th anniversary of LEGO, and particularly LEGO Castle, so this is definitely not a figure that is easily accessible to most, but I will have to say it definitely deserved a spot on the list just thanks to the incredible amount of detail and also nostalgia for the character itself. I think it's really cool to actually see some of the older LEGO Castle designs, like the Lion Knights, upgraded in modern form. If you recall back to some of the LEGO Awards videos that we did last year, the Black Falcon's Knights made it on the list because it was a great update of some of the classic designs, and when you actually remove some of the specialized shield, cape, and armor pieces of this character itself, you can just see the amount of detail that went into the figure. So first of all, the Queen has two different expressions here, and these were created for the figure itself, which do kind of feel pretty medieval to me. I do like the look and feel of the expressions and the character herself. Removing the head here, you can see this is a wonderful cape. This is probably one of my favorite capes in recent LEGO history, just to see the amount of detail harkening back to some of the glorious capes that we got back in the day for LEGO Castle. And she does feature the brand new, or somewhat brand new, sword, which is kind of exclusive to some of the more realistic LEGO Knights and stuff like that from the collectible Minifig series and Ideas Blacksmith Shop. But removing the armor here, you can just see a fantastic print for the torso and legs itself. It's almost kind of a shame that that's covered up by the armor, and I definitely feel that one thing this figure is lacking is printing on the armor. LEGO Lord of the Rings showed that LEGO does have the technology to print on these armor plates, and I think it would have been really cool to actually get a printed crest on the front of the armor, but maybe they just didn't have the budget for that, which is understandable, and it's still really nice to see a direct update to the Lion Knights dress kind of apparel looking right here, which is completely different than the other Lion Knights included in the set. This is actually a special figure compared to the rest of the characters in the set itself, so it is very cool to see that, and while it is unfortunate that the armor piece does cover up most of the detail on the figure, the cape more than makes up for it, and I definitely am very happy with the overall figure itself. Now, one complaint that I've been seeing online, which frankly I think is a little bit silly, is that people have been complaining about getting female knights. If you think about it, most of the LEGO Knights that we got were just using the standard smiley face, so if anything they were unisex, but if you really want to have male knights, there are more male heads than female heads that LEGO makes. You can just switch out the pieces. There's nothing here that remotely suggests it being a specific tied to a gender. You could very easily put a male head on this figure and call it a king. I mean, it's really up to you, and that's the beauty of LEGO. I, for one, am very happy that the Lion Knights Castle did actually feature more female knights than male knights, because that's a really great thing to do for inclusion, and it's really cool to actually see female knights because we typically don't really see them in terms of LEGO, and LEGO certainly wasn't doing a lot of them back in the day, so it's cool. It's almost like kind of making up for lost time. And again, it is LEGO. The torsos thankfully do not have any curves on them, so you don't actually have to use them for female warriors. You could just switch out the heads if you want to, so I think that's not a very valid complaint in my opinion. Now, that being said, this figure is a little bit lower on the list because, to be honest, I think it definitely could have used a little bit more detail, especially on the front of the legs and the torso. While it is really cool to see an update to the classic design, it is limited because that classic design was, well, classic and honestly fairly basic. And while they did update it the best they could, there are definitely a few more minifigures on this list that I just think are a little bit better than this one. And so let's now move on to number 6. And coming in at number 6, we have a licensed character. This is Professor Alastor Mad-Eye Moody from the LEGO Harry Potter line, who appeared in set number 76397, Hogwarts Moment Defense Against the Dark Arts class, which now retails for around $30 US, but previously retailed for $25. Now this figure is one of the great examples of the Harry Potter theme giving us collectible minifigure level detail in standard retail sets, almost kind of making a collectible minifig series based on Harry Potter, of which there have been 2, kind of useless, because we are getting figures of this insane level of detail already in these standard retail sets, which hey, I certainly am not complaining about that. Now this is a pretty special case, because we got a very similar Mad-Eye Moody figure from the collectible minifig series quite a few years before this particular set. In 2018, when the Harry Potter line actually officially launched, we got a very similar figure of him. He had dual molded legs, with the silver leg being kind of his metal piece on the boot there, and he also just had a slightly different colored jacket. This figure does actually have a lot of the similar level of detail, but does appear in a standard retail set, and especially because that collectible minifig series has long been discontinued, it's almost like a second chance to get an incredibly iconic LEGO character in brick form, especially for a smaller set overall. Now, one of my favorite details about these figures is that you can actually switch around the head. Spoilers for those of you who haven't seen Harry Potter yet, but he was actually in disguise for most of his first appearance as David Tennant here, Barty Crouch Jr., and it does come with a different hairpiece to put on Barty Crouch himself, which is really cool to see an alternate expression for this character, and really allows you to use the minifigure multiple times. So if you were lucky enough to own 2 copies of this figure, you could easily display them one way or the other, which is exactly what I did with the collectible minifigure series themselves. Overall, I just think it's really cool to actually get dual molded legs for a standard character in a retail set, and I especially like the way that this turned out with the jacket here, where you can really see the detail for the long coat not only is printed on the front, but also continues around the back, which is probably the most realistic you're going to get for a LEGO figurine. I really do like the attention to detail here with the browns, and unfortunately, one thing is that when you do make him walk and move the leg down, it does kind of kill the illusion a little bit of this being kind of just a jacket on the outside. But when he's perfectly standing still, this is a really great example of excellent printing for a character wearing a coat with dual molding on the legs, and I just wish that LEGO did this for all of their dual molded characters. If there is one complaint, previously the collectible minifigure version of him did use the maracas piece, specially printed in gold and brown, which he held upside down as his vial. I always thought that was a much better accessory than the Bionicle Baraki eye here, which you can see him holding upside down. It works okay for his potion vial, but I definitely think the maracas piece was just a little bit better suited to that particular element. Now, maybe that's restricted to the collectible minifigure series. I personally am not really sure, so that could be why they didn't use it here, but I just think they definitely could have improved the figure by just having that special extra accessory. Otherwise, this is another great representation of the actors and official media Harry Potter's license, and I just think it's one of the best Harry Potter figures we got this year. But with that, we can now move on to our next pick. Coming in at number 5, we have the Ned B. Loader Droid from the LEGO Star Wars Kenobi TV series. Now, I will have to say, he was exclusive to what is probably one of the most disappointing, maybe the worst Star Wars set in recent history, set number 75334, Obi-Wan Kenobi vs. Darth Vader, which was $50 US for what was essentially a pile of gray rocks and a place for 2 minifigures to fight. Now here's the thing. We can talk a lot about that particular set. There are a lot of reasons why it's that expensive. Not all those reasons are LEGO's fault. And to kind of make up for that, they actually put in this brand new minifigure in the set itself, featuring a brand new mold with excellent printing to kind of make up for the kind of atrocious price point that the set was priced at, and for what you actually get in the set itself. And hey, you know what? That absolutely paid off, because this is, in my opinion, one of, if not the best Star Wars minifigures we got all year, supplanted by only one more, which you may or may not be seeing later on in this list. So Ned B, regardless of what you think of the Kenobi TV show and his involvement in it, because he barely was in the show, was definitely a very memorable droid character to have, kind of similar to like a K2SO or something like that, where he had a very memorable design on screen and some good moments. Now, What's really stunning about this particular LEGO figure is just the level of detail that went into crafting the design of the mold itself. They probably pretty easily could have just made it maybe a standard minifigure head on top and just reuse one of the existing armor pieces, but all of this is brand new, and what's really cool is that the tile on the back is actually printed. So unlike many of the other pieces that you see in Star Wars stuff which have stickers, and a lot of the pieces that you put on the backs of figures are stickered, this is a full-on print on a 1x2 slope, which definitely adds to the value of the figure itself. He is just using a standard torso underneath, but I'm not complaining about that because of the sheer amount of detail you can see for the rest of the body here, and I just love the amount of detail that they managed to factor in, from the black lines underneath his neck here, to the scuffed up damage from wear and tear over the years, and even that very nice azure color, which definitely adds a pop of color to the figure itself. This is just one of the coolest figures we've gotten, and really just one that fits in a ton of sci-fi settings. It's absolutely not restricted to just Star Wars, you can use this for a ton of other stuff, and it almost feels disappointing to have so much effort that goes into a character like this who barely appeared on screen and didn't really do much, but hey, it's really cool, and if there's anything that Star Wars is known for, it's giving us the most convoluted backstories for characters who appeared on screen for just a couple of seconds, so you know what, this kind of makes sense giving this much effort to a minifigure character that wasn't even that prominent of a character of the show. Now, the reason why he is so low is honestly because I definitely think he's a pretty niche character to have. Not a lot of people may remember him from the Kenobi show or even care about getting a minifigure of him, but for those who do remember him, and even for those who don't really care about the character from the show, like myself, I absolutely can appreciate the level of detail that went into this figure, making it one of the best of this year. But with that, let's now move on to number 4. At number 4, we have the Changa minifigure from the LEGO Monkey Kid line. She is exclusive to set number 80032 Changa Mooncake Factory, which retails now for $70 US, but previously was closer to $60. Now that set was absolutely just dedicated to her and her character, and despite the character itself only really having about one focus episode in the entire Monkey Kid Season 3 and not really appearing elsewhere, this is just a fantastic design to have for what is honestly kind of just a one-off character in the line. Changa features a brand new specially painted headpiece which does incorporate the moon design. She is known for her mooncake factory and living on the moon, so it makes total sense that the figure would actually have that crescent design on the hairpiece, and honestly, I think this is just a really cute LEGO figure to have. It is a very appealing design in general, and definitely one that is useful for other purposes outside of just Monkey Kid. Removing the hairpiece, you actually can see she is wearing some sort of a necklace or detail on the top of her head here, which has the moon-shaped crescent design, and she also has an angry expression as well for maybe folks who are stealing from her factory, which you can see right here. And I appreciate the way that the hair mold actually is parted at the front to allow you to see the moon emblem right at the front of the forehead right there. Now, setting aside the hairpiece, which is definitely one of the best molded hairpieces we've gotten from Monkey Kid so far, and removing the skirt element, which is not exclusive to her, this does appear in a lot of other figures, but it is cool to get this finally in white, you can just see there's a lot of detail put into the character itself. While she doesn't have any sort of dual molding or arm printing, I just think that this absolutely makes up for it by having just a really nice, appealing metallic gold design. You can even see a bunny logo on the back, which references the bunny characters that she controls, and all in all, this is just a really great character design to represent an actual mythological character from Chinese folklore and mythology, and also to represent what was kind of a one-off character in the show with a very memorable design. Now, I don't know if Changa will have any appearances later on in the Monkey Kid TV show in the future, but if she doesn't, it is just really cool to actually get a full-on minifigure for this character itself, especially because she is pretty obscure, not a lot of people may know about it, but I just think this is just a really good character design, especially for one of LEGO's original themes, propelling her to number 4 on this list. But with that, I think it's time we now move into the top 3. Barely beating out many of the other choices on this list, let's take a look at number 3. Fans of LEGO Star Wars probably knew this one was coming, but this is the C-3PO figure exclusive to set number 75341, Luke Skywalker's Landspeeder, which was an Ultimate Collector Series set retailing for $240 US, but initially at just $200. Now this figure is, hands down, the best version of C-3PO we have ever gotten in LEGO form to date, and honestly, I don't think it would be physically possible for LEGO to make a better one than this unless they figured out their chroming process again and actually gave us a chrome one with gold and silver. Using LEGO's current production facilities, this is the best version of the character we have gotten, and it is absolutely fantastic. As you can see, C-3PO does feature dual molded legs, or at least one dual molded leg, which you can see specifically represents his silver leg, which is kind of the paint scuffed off of that one leg. He also does feature printing on the sides of both the legs and the arms, and overall is just one of the most detailed figures we got this year. Now here's my catch with this figure. The LEGO Star Wars team, more often than many of the other LEGO teams, generally tends to be very conscious about including specific versions of exclusive minifigs in sets and locking behind specific variants of figures in more expensive sets compared to another, and this has honestly been the subject of debate for some time. I know a lot of AFOLs are in the camp of they really want exclusive figures to remain exclusive to Ultimate Collector Series sets, as kind of a reward for purchasing the large and expensive set, while others, like myself, would rather that they don't have exclusive minifigs and expensive sets. Even though I will probably buy all the expensive sets, I think that if LEGO has the means to make a figure the best they can, why not just do it for every time we get that figure? And there is not a more glaring example than this particular C-3PO figure. This year we got two different versions of C-3PO. We got this version, but then we also got a version without the dual molded leg, still with some of the side printing, on a slightly less expensive set, and still pretty expensive, $90 for the Death Star trash compactor, and LEGO Star Wars designers specifically said they went out of their way to create a worse version of the figure just to keep this exclusive to the UCS Landspeeder because people were apparently angry that some of the clone troopers in the UCS Republic gunship last year later reappeared in a cheaper battle pack. I think that's kind of silly, to be honest, to have the best version of a character literally just made to be exclusive and not use him anywhere else. If you're going to give us a C-3PO figure, it doesn't cost LEGO that much more to incorporate the dual molded leg. And that's honestly one thing that's pulling this figure down to me. It's kind of the meta reasons behind its creation and behind its exclusivity to a special UCS set, because unfortunately, that means that if LEGO does stick by what the designers are saying and keeps this exclusive to the UCS Landspeeder, we may not ever see this figure again, and that is a shame, because it is the best version of C-3PO they can probably ever make. Still, meta reasons aside, I absolutely can appreciate this figure for what it is. Just look at that amazing amount of detail. It's just so satisfying to move the legs around and just see the level of detail incorporated on the arms. You can really just see all of the different detail for this C-3PO figure, kind of similar to the one that appeared in the Skywalker Saga video game. And all in all, man, it is the best version of C-3PO we have ever gotten. Just a shame that it's locked behind such an expensive set and probably will forever be locked behind that set. But with that, I think it's now time we move on to number 2. Coming in at number 2, we have the Eloy minifigure from the LEGO Horizon Zero Dawn or Horizon Forbidden West tall neck set, which is definitely one of the best AFOL-oriented sets we got this year. Now, the Eloy figure is from the Horizon Zero Dawn games, and actually I did not know what the games were. I vaguely heard about them. I'm not a big gamer myself, but after the LEGO set released, I actually bought myself a copy and have now been fully immersed in the game. I've had this figure on my desk for quite a while now, and there is good reason for it, because this is definitely one of the most detailed figures we have ever gotten depicting a specific licensed character. Now, Eloy is exclusive right now to set number 76989 Horizon Forbidden West tall neck, which now retails for around $90 US. Previously it was around 80, but then again, it is a absolutely fantastic set, and spoiler alert, the set may or may not be appearing on some of our best sets of the year list coming up very soon on the channel. But as you can see here, this minifigure, they absolutely went above and beyond in creating and crafting the character. You can actually see that the headpiece here, or the hairpiece, is dual molded, so you have a holographic blue light for her focus, which in-game is kind of a holographic display, which allows her to see stuff around her and interact with technology. I also love the attention to detail for the head sculpting here for the hair. This is just perfect based on the video game itself, and I have not seen a more direct translation of a video game character into LEGO form before this. Even aside from just the hairpiece, she does feature some excellent accessories. I like the recolor of the bow in white because this definitely does translate to one of the bows that you can use in-game. The spear itself is very good because you actually have the red feathered tip and the general spear at the top, so this just really feels right to me. And especially, they did not need to give her some printing on the arms, but they just went above and beyond and did it. This just feels extra special to me to have some of the armor plating in metallic silver on the sides of the arms, some of the clothing wraps continuing to the tops of the shoulders here, and of course, when you remove the hairpiece, she actually does have a different expression as well, which is pretty accurate, which what you can see in the game itself. Both of these expressions are incredibly accurate, and look, you can see right on the side of the head, she has her focus printed as well, which is just really cool. Now, one of my favorite things about this figure is that the hairpiece is actually rubberized, so if you wanted to, you can actually have her looking sideways by kind of just bending the hair a little bit, and if you want her maybe really extremely looking in one direction, you can kind of just put the hairpiece around and have her looking in one direction, which is a good thing about the rubberized hairpieces. They don't force you to just portray the head in a straight-on fashion, which is definitely very good if you want to pose this figure with her bow. All in all, the detail on this figure is some of the best I've seen in terms of creating a video game character in LEGO form. The only other ones that do kind of come close are some of the LEGO Overwatch figures, but still, this is just a different level of detail where you can see they absolutely paid a lot of attention to detail in crafting this particular character. I love the transparent integration in a rubberized piece. I've not seen that used a ton before, if at all, and overall, the facial expressions of the character just seem like the perfect minifig representation to many of the different expressions you will see of this character in-game. But with that, I think it's now time to move on to what I consider to be the #1 best minifigure of the entire year of 2022. Now, I may be a little biased on these, but let's go into it right now. Is it cheating to have 4 different minifigures as my top pick? Maybe, but hear me out. In our #1 pick, I decided to place all 4 of the LEGO Ninjago Dragon Ninja variants as the top of this list. If I had to pick one, I would probably go with Zane because I think that the transparent blue with the golden really does stand out, but I feel like these figures definitely come as a unit. The design philosophies behind these figures are pretty much identical from figure to figure, with transparent arms, transparent legs, the same molds used for the wings, and they really do come as a complete set, which is why I decided to actually put them at the top of this list. So what's the deal with the Golden Dragon variants? Well, Golden Dragon Zane, which is the transparent blue and gold one, was exclusive to a $100 set number 71773 Kai's Golden Dragon Raider, until they included him in a free magazine or a cheap magazine in Europe, which absolutely drastically decreased the price of the figure from around $30 to now $5, which I think is fantastic that LEGO actually included such a nicely detailed figure in one of their overseas magazines. Golden Dragon Kai, which appeared in set number 71769 Cole's Dragon Cruiser, also appeared in a magazine, so it's really cool to get him in a cheap fashion. Now, Golden Dragon Cole appeared in set number 71770, Zane's Golden Dragon Jet, retailing for $35, and Golden Dragon J appeared in set number 71768, Jay's Golden Dragon Motorbike for $20. Man, that is a lot of Golden Dragons. So, enough about the sets, let's talk about the figures themselves. These figures represent the 4 original Ninjago ninja characters from the very first start of the Ninjago lineup in specialized dragon elemental forms, the true embodiment of their elements. And regardless of what you think of how Crystallized ended, and I'll be giving my thoughts on that in a review very soon, I think these figures are probably some of the best Ninjago figures we have ever gotten. Ninjago has always given us interesting variants of energy-styled figures, but usually they're honestly kind of hit or miss. Some are really good, like the very first energy figures we got, and some are not so interesting, like the Airjitsu figures. But these are something special. Reusing specialized dual-molded wings that were introduced in the January 2022 core lineup, these Dragon Ninja feature a dual-molded headpiece where you can see they actually have the gold and transparent color factored into the headpiece themselves, a special new mold for the armor to actually connect Technic wings on the back, and for the first time ever, fully transparent arms and legs, which is kind of groundbreaking for a LEGO minifigure and absolutely makes these stand apart. Even without the armor and weapons and all that, these figures are absolutely stunning, and it is just so cool to actually hold these up to the sun and really kind of look at the light shine through them, because every single figure is pretty much just fully transparent, so you can just see an insane level of detail when it comes to depicting each of these characters. What I'm going to do now is showcase what each of the characters look like without the wings, without their accessories, and without the armor, just kind of featuring the characters by themselves so you can kind of get an idea of the particular characters and what they look like in this form. And man, even without all their accessories, they look really good. One thing that really stood out to me is just the amount of transparent detail that you can see for the figures themselves. While all of them are pretty much uniform, you can really see that a lot of love and attention went into depicting each of the character facial expressions and really tying it closer into what you would see in the show itself, and even rotating them onto the back here, you can actually see some energized versions of their official logos, which is quite cool to see as well. Definitely tying back to some of the standard energy variants that we've seen, but just with some excellent transparent detail, the likes of which I have never seen on any other minifigure. Now, talking about the facial expressions themselves, we actually got the Jay and Kai heads in spinners earlier this year, so they kind of saved some budget for the August wave by doing that. The Cole and Zane heads are new, and the Zane one I think is pretty good. The Cole one is a little bit strange to me. He has a very large, rocky unibrow, which definitely does not feel a lot like the character. I don't know what was going on with that, which is why the Kai and Zane ones are probably some of my favorites, but even the facial expressions aside, you can just see the incredible amount of detail in just one of these figures, from the headpieces being dual molded to the absolutely majestic wings and the massive wingspan of the characters. And just overall, if I were to take just one of these characters, say Zane here, again if I had to pick one it would have been Zane, and just showcase what he looks like rotated around, you can just see the insane amount of detail featured on this particular character, and why I definitely feel that these are the best minifigures of 2022. Of course though, these are just my thoughts, and I would love to hear yours, so do let me know in the comments which one of these figures do you own, and do you agree or do you disagree? I certainly think that the transparent limbs and the amount of golden detail featured in these Ninjago figures make them the best, but you may disagree. So do let me know, and I hope you did enjoy watching this video. We'll end this on a quick turnaround of Zane, just looking absolutely fantastic, stunning, splendid, with the elemental energy radiating out of him. This is just an absolute pinnacle of Ninjago minifigure design, and I don't know how they can get any better than this. Alright, and with that, we have summed up our look at the top 10 best LEGO minifigures of 2022. Now, of course, this is just my personal opinion, and I would love to hear yours. So let me know down in the comments below, do you agree, do you disagree, and do you own any of the minifigures on this list? I think, in my personal opinion, these are some of the best figures LEGO has ever done. They really outdid themselves with just the standard retail figures this year, with such a wide variety from so many different themes, licensed and non-licensed, from some of the best LEGO sets, but that's for another video. And so without further ado, thank you all so much for tuning into Duckbricks. Be sure to like and subscribe for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analysis coming your way very, very soon. Thanks so much, and bye for now.